Well, hello, and welcome to another edition of JC Lee MD. On today's Brain Stim 101, I'm going to walk you through what you can expect for your first treatment day of transcranial magnetic stimulation. So you've jumped through all of the many hoops for the pre-approval process. You've been vetted by your insurance company as deserving of transcranial magnetic stimulation, even though the economic analyses would show that TMS is actually more efficacious, cost efficacious than many other treatments. Insurance companies still like to hold on to, TMS treatment as like a very high priority and low availability kind of thing. But you've showed up to the treatment suite. What can you actually expect? Well, the first thing that we would need to do once you get here is to essentially do some brain mapping. So we would find different ways to actually target that dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. And there are many different methods. Each clinic will have their own to target that place. And typically what you would do is have like a cap of some sort or have a marking kind of in that area to sort of direct the traffic and direct the coil to that area. But before we actually determine the treatment parameters and set the treatment intensity, we do what's called the motor threshold. And the motor threshold is done with this kind of smaller figure of 8 coil. And it's done over the right motor cortex. So there's that strip in our brain that is our motor homunculus that kind of controls all our movement. And we try to find that area that causes the thumb to twitch. And so as I trigger this, this button with the treatment coil, I can cause the thumb to twitch, and I can also adjust the intensity of the stimulus to go higher or lower, and it's often measured in a percentage of the maximal stimulator output. And the motor threshold is defined as the stimulus intensity that causes the thumb to jump 5 out of 10 times or 3 out of 6 times, 50% of the time. And so what we'll typically do is move this kind of motor coil around to find the hot spot that causes the thumb to jump a lot. And then we'll start to adjust the intensity up and down and find that intensity, the motor threshold, that causes the thumb to jump 5 out of 10 times. Now that is considered your motor threshold. Now treatment is delivered by a different coil. You can see there's this coil over here. It's the B70 of the Mag Venture. There are multiple different models, each with different proclivities, pros and cons. But for our purposes, the B70 is really great in terms of penetrance and durability and efficacy and all of that good stuff. And so that is actually placed on typically the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex or whatever target you've mapped out with your provider. And treatment is typically delivered at 120% of the motor threshold. So if after the motor threshold procedure, your motor threshold is determined to be 50% of the machine output, then the goal treatment intensity would be 120% of 50. So that would be 60%. And that's where we're headed. Now, your treatment provider may not necessarily start all the way at the top. They may start at 100% of motor threshold and then increase it gradually over time, depending on your tolerability, depending on your familiarity, etc. But the idea is that we're using a personalized neurophysiological marker, the motor threshold, to determine your baseline kind of excitability at the level of the cortex, and what kind of juice and what kind of parameters we're going to put in to your actual treatment stimulation.